So do you like to cook? But do you find sometimes when you place that dish down in front of a diner that you don't get that sense of wow that you expected? Now this could be because even though you spent hours on how the dish should taste, you've not spent enough time on how it should look. And as we all know, we eat with our eyes first. But don't worry, you're certainly not alone. And in these series of videos, we're going to be critiquing beautiful plates of food from some of the best visual chefs to try and find out how they make the most stunning looking plates of food. So let's move on to our first brilliant visual chef, which is Josh Ward from London, but that's Ontario in Canada, not in England, which is a dish he's described as a rip on a shrimp cocktail. The shrimp has been lightly cured in shoyu koji and turned into a presse, served on a norito that's been sauced with Jongang ketchup and ginger creme fraiche, finished with nasturtium to provide a bit of horseradishy kick and a geranium for that hint of lemon. Please excuse any of the bad pronunciation I put in there, I'll put the actual names up on the screen. In the other videos, I think one of the first things I've looked at is colour, but on this dish the first thing that strikes me is the shapes. We've got three wonderful squares that we can see there, all of which are incredibly precise and look the same, which shows a level of skill, but also how important the aesthetics is to get each one absolutely right. I think in a dish like this, what's also very important is the rule of three, because that really stands out. The shapes are wonderful, but also the fact that we've got three of them placed so nicely on the plate. Most of us know about the rule of three and using odd numbers in our cooking, but what's particularly successful here is the use of the negative space and the proportion. For example, if there are only two of these, it would look very, very odd and certainly not enough on the plate, but the three fills it up nicely and then makes the proportions fantastic. The proximity between each one of the squares is also really, really good. It just looks like an incredibly well-balanced, well-thought-through dish. I know I said the most interesting thing on this dish for me is probably the shapes, but I also think we need to touch on the colours, because again, we've got some wonderful complementary colours here of the greens, here and here and here with the nasturtium leaves. And then also we've got the wonderful pinks of the leaves here. And then we've also got the pink of the presse itself, all of which complement each other very, very nicely and provide a nice bit of contrast from the white plate, the white dish, and the background. I think the last thing I would say about how this is placed compositionally is the wonderful diagonal that Josh has placed the squares of the presse on. He's clearly done this because he knows how important it is to have visual interest when you put the dish down in front of your diner. And most food isn't really put on a diagonal line. Things are more central or certainly more symmetrical. We've got some lovely asymmetry here, and it adds a little bit of tension moving away from you. So it's a fantastic looking plate of food. Let me know in the comments what you think about it. Would you do anything different? Would you maybe have had larger, smaller? How would you work with the proportions of this dish? Now, if you want to try and understand a little bit more about how composition can work in plate design, then I suggest you watch this video here, which is one I did a while ago all about plate composition, where we talk about shapes, we talk about lines, where we talk about the rule of three and how you can create tension and drama within your plating composition. Now, moving on to the second dish, you'll see that it actually has a very similar colour palette to the last dish. I did that intentionally because I wanted to make this video more about shape and composition and how and what things are like on the plate. This dish is by chef Mauro Colagreco, based at the restaurant Mirazur in France. It's a stunning dish made up of beetroot, pickled purple shiso, which is like a Japanese herb, tastes a bit like basil, cumin, cinnamon or anise, and a lovely piece of duck breast down the middle. You could look at this as a kind of monochromatic, I think, because we're basically looking at purples, pinks, reds, all of which are in the similar sort of position on the colour wheel. But a bit like the last dish, the strongest element of this is the composition and the shapes that we've got going on here. It's not often you see star shapes, and it's certainly not very often you see something that looks a little bit to me like a dagger. To be honest, which adds a huge amount of contrast to this dish. It looks quite aggressive to me, which creates quite a lot of tension. Almost as if this is the dagger and you've been stabbed, here's the blood. Again, I could be looking too much into all of these sorts of things, but it's just what immediately strikes me when you see it. Almost these are like little injuries. This may not be what the chef was going for, but just when I look at it, it's so visually interesting and so powerful. That's the kind of thought process that I have. I'm not suggesting this will work with all dishes, but it really makes it stand out. Really gives it power, really gives it theatre, really gives it drama. Again, a bit like the last dish, and again, which is classic, we've got the rule of three going on, and we've got the mixture of shapes. You've almost got a triangle shape across here. You've got the star shapes of these little explosions here, or flowers, depending on which way you look at it. You've got an oval shape here. You've got the circle of the sauce here. And then you've got, I'm not sure what you call this shape, but you've got a kind of a rectangle shape here. There's quite a lot going on, which adds quite a lot of complexity visually. Clearly, you've got an awful lot of shapes. They've got to try and work together, which might seem a little haphazard, but I think the chef's put an awful lot of work into this to create the tension that I talked about earlier. It's an incredibly striking plate of food. So tell me, what do you think? Do you prefer this dish, or are you more a fan of the first dish? For me, the first dish from Josh is a lot more simple. Not in terms of the cooking again, because again, we're just talking about the visual side of food here, but certainly from how it's plated, just with the 3 items going across there, similar color palette, contrasty colors, which is great. And then looking at the second dish from Mauro, you can certainly see the difference. You can certainly see that this one has an awful lot more going on to it, more complexity. And I don't want to hammer this point home, but I think the tension that this dish creates, even if you don't see what I saw earlier, makes it really, really powerful. Thanks so much for watching this video. Trying to decode and deconstruct how they work is actually becoming a really useful learning experience just for me, even as a non-chef. So hopefully you're finding it useful as somebody who loves to cook. If you'd like to watch a few more, I'll link to a playlist here of some of the ones I've done previously. So feel free to click on those now. So next time you're plating your dish, try giving a little bit more time, thought and effort to how it's going to look, not just about the taste. Good luck and I'll see you next time.